to another episode of Splash Considerations. My name is Justice De Los Santos, San Francisco Giants beat reporter for the Bay Area News Group, San Jose Mercury News, East Bay Times, whatever you want to call us, as long as you read, as long as you subscribe. And we've got a three-parter today. We're going to be talking with Alex Stumpf for another edition of MLB Corner. We're going to be talking with Josh Tolentino for a preview of the Orioles series that starts today. But before getting into that, we are going to be talking with the pride of San Francisco State University. She ain't Rick, but she is a Rubin. Shayna Rubin, San Francisco Chronicle. Shayna, how we doing? I told you I was going to have an intro. I told you I was going to have one.
That was impressive. You're forgetting about the real pride of San Francisco State, which is Annette Bening. Icon.
Whatever. Not on the podcast for right now. For
Maybe
all
one
my
day.
intents and purposes, you were the true pride of San Francisco State. Random question that I want to get into, and the reason I bring this up is because I went to a concert last night. Got a fun little excerpt from that, but I want to throw this over to you before getting into Giants talk, because that's what we're here for. That's what the people want to hear. Best concert you've ever been to off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, it was, I'm aging myself, 2013 Rock the Bells. I don't know if that's a concert, but it counts as a concert for me.
It counts.
It's a mini festival, whatever. It was a pretty stacked lineup. It was like Tyler, the Creator was not a headliner type of era. And Kid Cudi was there. E40 and Too Short were there.
Oh, man.
Kid Cudi was insane. It's very, so I bring that up because it's a very nostalgic sort of a type of a lineup there that it was awesome. And I was with all my friends from college, so it's great.
That is, I mean, every festival is kind of like this, but that's like such like artist by artist. The vibe is so different, especially 2013 era Tyler. That's like,
yeah.
There's that running joke that, you know, Tyler fans from 2013 would absolutely hate Tyler fans from 2026. I might fall into that category. I want to mention this super briefly. I went to the Masayoshi Takanaka concert last night. For those of you who don't know him, my super lazy comparison is that he's basically the Japanese Carlos Santana, which it's not a one-to-one, but that's my super lazy comp. He actually performed a Santana song, and it made me think of my dad. Like, I just instantly tugging at the heartstrings. My dad brought me up on Santana. And shout out to my guy Max yesterday. I was walking into the venue. I showed him my little digicam. I was like, hey, I can bring this in, right? And he was like, yeah, for sure. He's like, are you Justice? And I was like, how do you know my name? I didn't show you any ID. He was like, oh, I listened to the podcast. So we got a loyal listener out there at the Masonic in San Francisco. So shout out to Max. Hope you enjoy this episode. And where we're going to start this episode, Shayna, is we're 13 games into the season. We had an off day. I feel like we have more off days than usual, but that's neither here nor there. There's a lot of places we can start, and I want to talk about the bullpen. I'm going to throw this over to you. You obviously just wrote about the bullpen. I think we all kind of have wrote about the bullpen, and I thought of the line from Django, from Leonardo DiCaprio's character. I'm forgetting what his name is. Monsieur Candy.
Mm.
You had my curiosity,
Mm.
but now you have my attention. Shayna, thoughts on the bullpen?
It's just that. I mean, I feel like when I was writing about the bullpen, I was, it was like a little adventure because the bullpen is such an adventure where you get moments like on Monday where they bring in Ryan Barucki. I pronounce his name because there's a Hebrew prayer that goes like Baruch Atah Adonai, and then I always pronounce it like the Baruch, but it's Barucki.
You told him that yet?
No.
Hey, we got a whole season.
Yeah, well, I don't know how that would land. So you get moments like with the one on with Ryan Barucki on Monday where there are runners on against the Phillies. You bring in a lefty to face Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. And a few moments earlier, you saw that they were warming up Matt Gage, and then all of a sudden Barucki comes out. He's given up 2 home runs, and you're thinking, what's the logic here? And not for nothing, it doesn't really go according to plan. He walks Schwarber, Harper gets a hit, they lose the game, the bullpen blows it. That's the story. So then it becomes more about what is this bullpen management? Why are they making these decisions? And then a couple of days later, they bring in Caleb Killian to face the same guys, holding on to this shutout streak. And Killian's a right-hander. The core of that lineup is left-handed, so you're thinking, what's the thinking here? But it pays off, and he gets 2 keys out against their best hitters. So I guess that is to say that when you talk to Tony Vitello about the decision making, he's very much like, yeah, we're kind of with. He doesn't say it like this, but it's like, yeah, we're kind of winging it based on the fact that we don't have defined roles, and also, we have these analytic things, we have these numbers that are telling me what the best matchups are, and we're kind of going by that, kind of going by feel, kind of going by experience. So it feels very much like a work in progress. So it's every decision is has a thought process behind it, and every time the bullpen door opens, you're not ever quite sure who it's going to be and why. So it's kind of like a fun experiment, I guess.
They should just start doing like they should just cover up the bullpen, cover all the cameras in there, put a tarp over it, and then you just go like full WWE. Like we don't really know who's gonna be coming out the bullpen. Get the smog
Yeah,
the fog machine too. You're not gonna know who's coming out of that bullpen until somebody starts running out onto the field. But you said winging it. The term that Vitello used in spring training was or fluid, and this bullpen definitely is a work in progress. And I kind of want to isolate the Killian one in particular because I think the way that Andy Baggerly said it in his story, he said it like was a galaxy brain moment. And the Giants had a little bit of leeway. I think they were maybe leading by 3 or 4 at the time, but I remember he walked Trey Turner, and I'm pretty sure that brought the tying run to the plate. And it's like, oh, there's Kyle Schwarber, the guy that hit 50 plus home runs, and oh, there's Bryce Harper. And then he didn't just retire them. He kind of like walked them down, and it was like, oh. So,
yeah.
so like let's run through that moment a little bit because I think of all of the bullpen moments so far, that's the one where I'm most like, this is like I don't want to say it's a crazy pull, like as you mentioned, they have their numbers, but that was the one where I was like, this is a heat check. That's how I kind of felt. This was a managerial heat check.
It did feel like a heat check. I felt like I'm not going to be beholden to the expectations. We know that. I mean, I think the most shocking, not shocking, but the moment where it felt like a heat check was the Kyle Schwarber strikeout, where I think he buckled him kind of like out of sword or something like that with his knuckle curve or whatever it was, some breaking ball, and it was like, oh, that's the vision is panning out, and then you sort of had this like fun baseball moment where you see the vision panning out, and yeah, I guess it gives credence to the vision, which is you know, they're not afraid to mess up, and maybe that's going to piss off a lot of fans because the margin for error, even though it's 162 games, it feels like early on you're looking for reasons, or you're looking for a pattern. You're looking to figure out how Tony is going to run the team, how he makes his decisions, who's he's listening to, if he's listening to numbers more than his gut. And that's such a big conversation when it comes to managers. And he's just kind of throwing all of that burden of, I don't know, I don't want to say he's throwing the burden of expectation out the window because he's always acutely aware of how we're going to ask him about these things and interpret it and knives out or knives not out. But it's definitely an open experiment that we're witnessing with the bullpen.
I'm glad you brought up the throw knives quote. That was like such a crazy thing he mentioned at the end of like one of his quote. He's like, I'll pick who I pick, and if it doesn't work out, you guys can throw knives at me. I was like, Tony, we're not going to be throwing knives. Like, I get
Yeah,
what you meant, like metaphorically, but he's had a lot of those moments. I think that on the hierarchy of what he's said so far as a Giants manager, I think that's kind of lower. The one thing I do want to bring up, and as I throw this over to you, they've only had one of their 5 wins. Only one of them hasn't been by at least 5 runs. And
mm-hmm.
it was the one where Ryan Walker entered in the San Diego. He allows the 2-run homer to Jackson Merrill. That could have easily been like a 3-run win. So I'm still a little hesitant like with the bullpen, but again, like there are pieces there. But as we know, it's a lot more than just stuff. It's kind of like, for lack of a better term, you kind of have to have that dog in you. And I think that's another thing that Vitello's kind of looking for. It's like the DMX. Where my dogs at? If we're
Yeah,
talking about music again. Where my dogs at?
yeah. He's definitely looking for the dogs, and that's like maybe something you don't want to openly admit when games matter, uh, because you don't want to be experimenting when games matter. But that's what we're looking at, and the experimentation is sort of they're very open about it. It's like who's everyone has an opportunity to prove that they're a dog, and we're seeing it now, and we're going to decide the pecking order based on what you guys do in these first few series. And the series that I mean, they've been playing some really tough teams. They've not played well in a lot of games, and they've been surprisingly good in a couple others. So there's as you said, there hasn't been a whole ton of save opportunities or very close high leverage late innings, but you're seeing some of the stuff where that can play, and you're seeing where some of the experience can play as well. So it's an interesting process.
Yeah, and to what you mentioned, last year about or just like the fans in general, like they want like a clear structure. Like when you think of some of the better Giants teams in recent memory, you obviously had the core four. You had last year where it was Randy Rodriguez pitched his way to an All-Star game with the seventh, Tyler Rogers owned the eighth, Camilo Duvall had the ninth. And you're just not going to have that this year, at least right now. Like maybe that structure emerges. Maybe we never see that structure. But I think one thing that's interesting too is I don't know if this is your read on it, but I think right now it's kind of just quote like in a way just trying to weather the storm in a sense because there are some guys that are as the season goes along. Again, there's going to be injuries that always pop up. Obviously, Jose Buto is going to be out 2 to 4 as he removed the blood clot. Like you never know what injuries are going to happen. But my kind of read on it, I don't know if you feel this way as well, is it feels like once we get to like May, June, even July, maybe even August, if they start making moves, I think this bullpen definitely has the potential to get really strong as the season goes along. And then maybe that provides an opportunity for more structure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of pieces there, and I hate to be like a stuff merchant where you're looking at
No,
like,
be a stuff merchant. I love being a stuff merchant.
but like there's a little more stuff than you might have anticipated going into the season because in its bare sort of bones where there haven't when the roster wasn't decided, it looked fundamentally like there was a stunning lack of stuff, and now when you have Tidwell and Killian, Keaton, Wynn in there, it makes it far more dynamic than it was a couple weeks ago. And it sort of makes the prospect of how it could look as the season goes on a little bit more intriguing. And you have those guys like Tidwell, like Keaton, like Killian, who be could elevate the entire group and make them something to contend with, in addition to Eric Miller and Ryan Walker, and then some of the sort of more seasoned guys, Matt Gage, and more of the seasoned guys who create that balance. So there's a broad spectrum of stuff, of experience, um, of reliability that could potentially make them an interesting group. And I think they don't want to, have it be like this all year. I think we'll see, like in any other season, iterations of who goes where, depending on everything, injuries, status of the season, etc. So I think that I don't anticipate it being this fluid for that for super long, but it's hard to tell how long because we don't know.
We really don't know. I think the one thing that was you mentioned stuff, and I think I think Tony referred to I think it was Blade and Caleb Killian specifically. I think he said they're stuff guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at, any, pitch modeling, like if you're not familiar with the pitch modeling, basically blue means you're not great, orange or red, whichever site you go to means you are great. There's a lot of orange and red with some of these guys, especially like Tidwell's sweeper, like man, like that pitch is just disgusting. So there's definitely some stuff guys here, but as we mentioned, it's more than just stuff. And one thing that I want to note as well is the strikeout rate for some of these guys. Again, it's super small sample size, but one of the things that I mentioned going into the season is that these guys didn't really have an established track record besides maybe Miller and Walker of having an above strike average strikeout rate. And the strikeout rate of that bullpen is above average. So if you're looking for encouraging signs, like some people might be like, why does strikeout rate matter? Well, the thing I always say is like run around second, third, one out. Like you don't need a ground out. Sometimes you just need a punchy.
Yeah, exactly. And you again, being a stuff merchant, you need that option. You can't always rely on getting the ground ball, and on its face it feels like they have options to do either, to get either out, to get a variety of outs in different ways. And they, like Tidwell for example, he's throwing more strikes than he was in spring training, so there's a lot of things going right with some of those stuff guys that you maybe were worried about when it comes to guys that have stuff and don't necessarily prioritize or aren't necessarily getting it over the pot, as Vitello says, as much as necessary.
One quick note on Tidwell. I think he might be the only major leaguer that I've ever seen reading The Count of Monte Cristo. Side note in all this.
Is he?
Yes. There's like a huge book in his locker, and I was like, what are you reading? He's like, The Count of Monte Cristo is like the first 70 pages are kind of boring, but you got to get through them in order to get the plot developed. I was like, Blade. That's that
Interesting.
Tennessee education right there. That's that Tennessee education coming in. But I want to transition, talking about the bullpen, I want to transition to the guys catching them. That's, of course, Patrick Bailey, and that's, of course, Daniel Susac. Daniel Susac's been setting the world on fire. I'm going to start it here. He's been setting the world on fire. 5 for 5, first guy since Ted Cox in 1977 to start his major league career at least 5 for 5. Got his first RBIs. He had the beer shower a couple days ago when he got his first hit. Vibes have been incredibly great every time he has started, which is only 2 games. And that's where I want to transition to this. It has been 2 games. And this is not an indictment on Daniel Susac's ability. He is a former first rounder, which, you don't really get when it comes to Rule 5 draft picks. But I'm online. I see the discourse. I see the people asking for more Susac, which is fair when you see Patrick Bailey have a WRC plus of, I think, 12. But Shayna, I don't think we're going to be seeing a drastic change at the starting catcher position anytime soon.
No, I would not. I think it's easy to say, especially given the weirdness of the offense, like, why wouldn't you just play the hot hand? Why wouldn't you get the hottest bat in baseball more opportunities to do that? And that's an immediate spark plug that you're just opting out of. So I understand the logic of being annoyed that the hot hand isn't being played a lot, or only for 2 games. But this idea that he's going to replace Patrick Bailey is a kind of a non-starter. Not even replace the fact that there's going to be more of a shared responsibility, or that there's some controversy or anything like that it's a non-starter, just for the mere fact, other than a bunch of other things, that Patrick Bailey is the defensive value is real when you talk about uh, the publicly available stats, like the runs that he's saving from just pitch framing, being behind the plate, et cetera, et cetera. That's real. That's something. He won a Gold Glove. That's real. He's providing an outlier type of value defensively that is not just something you can opt out of because of 2 really good games from the backup catcher. And I think that it's more something that you want to look at in terms of how you can optimize Susac and the hot hand, as long as you have it hot, without sacrificing the defense that Bailey provides. Something that was brought up during Vitello's media session was, oh, maybe you can DH Susac and bring up Jesus Rodriguez if you really need a catcher, because Rodriguez is not only positionally versatile, he plays some second base, but that's an option you have on the roster. And moving the hot bat to the DH, which is more of a fluctuating position anyway. So there's options, and then there's the left-handed aspect. Patrick Bailey is not someone that you necessarily have to rely on against. You want to rely on against left-handed pitching, and Susac is. So maybe there's more of a matchup situation that you can exploit. And when you had someone like Christopher Sanchez, that was kind of the perfect scenario, because Susac's approach at the plate is exactly what they needed to do against a pitcher like that, which is going the other way, not doing too much, not trying to swing for the fences, just get a handle on something that he's offering. So there's going to be a certain matchups where Susac just makes a lot of sense as the catcher, or at least in the lineup.
And that it does make a lot of sense, I guess, particularly against lefties. I think that that's something that we could potentially see going forward. But I want to get back to the Bailey defensive value. He's a 2-time Gold Glover. Probably should have been a Platinum Glover. I know it's a fan vote, but if you just look at the fielding run value, he's, depending on your perspective, like, he is the most valuable defender in the game. And it's kind of one of those things where, defense, you don't really, it's easy to not notice it, especially with catchers. Like, it's one thing if you have Pete Crow Armstrong like running around the outfield. That's one thing, but his defensive value is a lot more subtle because it is the catcher position. And the Giants aren't just gonna, throw their like they're not gonna see like the 2.5 seasons of Bailey being an elite defender and say, "Hey, Daniel Susac, you had 2 games. You're going to be the start." Like that's just not how it works. That's not how this works. What's the mean? That's not how any of this works.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not how this works. It's just a classic. I feel like this happens a lot. It's a classic early season, like, oh, there's a hot hand, play him every single day. Why aren't you doing that? It's malpractice if you don't get this guy in there, but it's also malpractice if you, as a manager, as a coaching staff, are reactionary to something like that and make declarative decisions on how the lineup is going to roll out every day based on 2 games. So maybe it's not even worth a conversation, but it is something that I saw on Twitter. People getting upset that Susac there isn't a positional shifter. I don't know that there's not a conversation about that, and I understand that has a lot to do with Bailey isn't Susac has like double the hits that Bailey does, so it's a couple games. Like I think everyone can look at Statcast and understand that the stuff that you're not noticing, it's being registered in ways that you don't understand, just in terms of watching the game, I guess.
And the thing I will say, because I don't want to just completely disregard that maybe Susac, there might be opportunities to play more. If we get to the end of April and his OPS is more in like the 800 range, and he's particularly hitting lefties well. And again, this is a first round talent. It's not often you get like a first round talent as a Rule 5 person. So if we get to the end of April or even mid-May and he's consistently hitting lefties, then maybe it's like, okay, like how can we configure this roster a little more to get Susac a little more playing time? You mentioned Jesus Rodriguez, who's just incredibly versatile. I think he has more gloves than like anybody in the Giants organization right now. Like he can play second base, he can play left field, he catches, he might be able to play first base if you really need it. But that conversation is not right now. If it's a conversation that they want to have in April, then sure, if he's still hitting. But I think as of right now, it's like let's appreciate this for what it is. It's a historic start to a career. Like the last Giant to at least start their career 4 for 4 was Willie McCovey, and he is now the first Giant to start his career 5 for 5, at least that we know of. So it's fun. Vibes have been high the last 2 times that he has been a starting catcher, but let's also not forget the value that Patrick Bailey brings on the defensive end. Anything else you want to talk about in regards to this little
Nah,
this
I think you
this
nailed it.
catcher this
Covered.
catcher discussion? So we're 13 games into the season. They obviously play their 14th tonight later in Baltimore. A lot of baseball that we've had an opportunity to watch. We've seen some good, we've seen some bad, we've seen kind of in the middle. What are the other things just over this really, again, small sample that have really caught your attention as you're trying to digest this first 2 weeks of the
Mm.
season?
I mean, the offense, it feels like, has been a focal point of where things have gone wrong when they have. Just because when they lose, like most of their losses have just been because they've had a couple bullpen blowups, but most of their losses came early against good pitching, which you're going to face good pitching in this league. There's a lot of good pitching in this league. And it's a problem that happened last year too, where it sounds so simplistic, like, oh, you can't hit good pitching. That's, yeah, okay, that's a very I don't know. It feels like a basic problem that if you're an offense, you might run into.
Good
Um,
pitching is good pitching for a reason.
Good pitching is good pitching. It's like, oh, if you talk to a pitcher about, if you talk to the hitters about like, oh, why couldn't you hit Cam Schlittler? It's like, because he's good. He's like, you try to hit that. You try to hit that whatever, insane cutter,
Yeah.
and he has every variety of fastball just blowing by you.
Or Nolan
Um,
McLean too. Like that
yeah,
sweeper that he had to Elliott was just absurd.
yeah, exactly. So, but then that's when you think about the context of that and why they haven't been able to sort of get off the mediocrity table. It has to do with that. Like what separates the good teams from the mediocre to bad teams is your ability to separate yourself. And you separate yourself by hitting the good pitching. The Dodgers are hitting good pitching. The Yankees are hitting good pitching. The Toronto Blue Jays were hitting good pitching. That's what separates you. So it's one thing to say like, oh, understandable. It's really hard to hit that type of pitching, but it's also puts into context for people who are trying to figure out why are the Giants always so mediocre. That's a trending reason that separates them from the good teams that are perennially in the postseason is that they're having trouble figuring it out, and that's why the Christopher Sanchez game was so encouraging from an offensive standpoint is because that's the caliber of pitcher that you have to do something against if you want to emerge as a leader in the division. If you want to separate yourself from the mediocre to the good. And their approach against him worked. That's the second most hits he's allowed in his career, is 11 hits or whatever it was. So you're seeing little glimpses of where the game planning, which is supposed to be a major focal point with the new hitting coach, Hunter Mentz, who came from the Blue Jays, that's supposed to be something that should change this year, and we haven't seen it early on, but that was a game where you started to see and it's a case by case basis. Sometimes you have to adjust in the middle of the game. They didn't adjust against Pivetta, but that's a situation that stood out to me as something to put a pin in is the game against Sanchez.
Yeah, they definitely went into the off season or not off season, off day with a little bit of momentum offensively. They scored 6 runs, they scored 5 runs. They're still averaging only a little over 3.5 a game. And I think, the game on Wednesday, we obviously saw Rafi Devers kind of wake up a little bit. He entered that game with 2 RBIs and he totaled four, three coming on a 3-run homer over the center field fence. Just one of those classic like Rafi Devers ones that like hovers in the air forever. And to the element of good pitching, like at some point, yes, they are going to need to be able to be like figure out a game plan against the likes of like you're not going to face Max Fried a lot. You're not going to face him the rest of this year, barring they make the World Series. But they might see Nolan McLean again. Who else? They might see Christopher Sanchez later this month. Like there's going to be pitchers like good pitchers. Like they have to be able to adapt on the fly. They're probably going to see Nick Pivetta again, and it's kind of no secret what he wants to do. Like he's going to spam them with fastballs. Like, and I will say to the fastball point too, they were not good they were really bad to start the year. Not as bad in recent games. I think they kind of figured it out a little bit against Philadelphia. And one thing that I wanted to throw over to you on the offensive end, the one person that's like really stood out, and it's not just for the numbers themselves. It's Elliot Ramos. And the strikeouts really jump off the page. I think it's 20 strikeouts in 49 plate appearances. That just isn't who Elliot Ramos is. But I think the one thing that's really like not resonated, it's like jumped out is that the bat speed's down. It was like 74 miles an hour to 70, but also like the tilt is different, like the attack angle is different. Like it's just I haven't had a chance to talk to Elliot about it. I'm probably going to try to do that in Cincinnati, but it's just one of those things where it's like Rafi Devers being cold. Okay, you shrug your shoulders. He started last year 0 for 50 or 0 for 19 with 15 strikeouts. Like he figured it out. But Elliott, it's like you don't see guys lose that much bat speed, especially he's in his 20s. So I think it's one of the more curious things that's kind of popped up from anybody offensively these first couple of games.
Yeah, that's definitely a red flag when the bat speed goes down. I remember it happened, and Tony was asked about it the other day, 2 days ago. And something that I think that Tony said was he's working through some stuff and basically insinuating that it wasn't a huge concern. And I remember this happening last year with Willy Adames, where I don't think it was as drastic of a difference between his 24 and his 25 bat speed, but it was down like 2 miles an hour or something like that. And I remember asking Pat Burrell, who was the hitting coach then, about it. And I think I talked to Willie about it a little bit. And the answer was when you're just trying to figure it out at the plate, the bat speed goes down a little bit. And it's not necessarily a mechanical flaw or an injury or anything like that. But sometimes when a player is just trying to see the ball better and sort of break down his swing a little bit in real time and get a better feel, then the bat speed is one of the first things to go, because you're not just sort of swinging as freely as you would like to. So it is an indication that he's working through some stuff at the plate, perhaps, but it's definitely worth a conversation with Elliot, and he's very honest about it, about what he's going through mentally, physically, etc. But to those who might be concerned that something's like wrong with him, I would probably assume that it's more to do with the fact that he's working through some stuff at the plate, that and the bat speed is just sort of the result of that, the symptom.
One last thing that I want to get to before we get out of here is, before the season, we talked a lot about Luis Arraez's defense. We talked about his transition back to second base. He had been not a great defender pretty much in his entire career at honestly any position. But as we stand here right now, I guess sit technically, Luis Arraez is +2 outs above average. And I know assists don't mean as much in baseball as they do in basketball, but he's leading all NL second basemen in assists. And I don't know if that's going to hold, but I think strictly based off here, if the visual listeners or visual watchers, they can see I'm pointing to my eyes. Based off the eye test, Shayna, it's looked good.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's like the Ron Washington effect, or he's just, it's based on the defenders around him. Maybe he has better chemistry, or maybe he's just, locked in a little more. Who knows? But he's been good. He's made a couple of plays. His range has been pretty good at the position, and it's showing in the numbers. So far, all the concern about his defense at second base is not manifesting into something tangible.
I think when I looked at the Giants' numbers overall defensively, I think by fielding run value, they're like in the bottom half, which I think if I told you 13 games in, they'd be in the bottom half, I think you would expect. I think you'd expect Matt Chapman to be, pretty rock solid. I think you'd expect Luis Arraez to be below average. So, just something interesting moving forward. I don't know if he's going to be a +2 guy all season, but if he's +2 while batting, I think he's batting 320 right now. 1 year, 12 million. That's, again, it's super small sample, but that contract so far it's turned out pretty well for the Giants.
Yeah, so far he's doing exactly what he came as advertised to do, which is, is putting the ball in play and getting hits. So it's and the defense he's very confident that he's a second baseman, and sometimes you just have to put the performance behind confidence like that, and he has. So the contract is looking very very smart right now.
Luis Arraez stacking up hits on the field. Shayna Rubin stacking up hits with the clicks. Shayna, where can we find your work?
At the San Francisco Chronicle, sfchronicle.com or something like that.
Where can we find you on Twitter or
Oh,
X or Blue
Twitter.
Sky, wherever, whatever we're calling it these
At
days?
Shayna Rubin. It's my full government name.
You got your full government name in there. Shayna Rubin, not Rick Rubin. They couldn't get mine in there. Filipino discrimination couldn't fit the whole thing in there. It's just De Los Santos over there. But Justice De Los Santos, Shayna Rubin, we're going to transition now to the latter half beginning with my conversation with Josh Tolentino. And then we got Alex Stumpf to finish us out. Shayna, this was fun. We're going to do this again sometime soon, and catch y'all later.
Later.
Now joined by a sports columnist from the Baltimore Sun. He's the former president of the sports task force of the Asian American Journalism Association. And he's also one of the other Filipinos that you'll see in a major league press box. Josh Tolentino. Kuya Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mabuhay, man. It's great to link. I've rambled on and on off the camera about how much I admire your work and Rise in recent years, man. But glad to link on the pod and happy to join, man.
Appreciate you for coming on. Appreciate you for the kind words as well. And I think the one place that I want to start, I saw a clip that you posted on your IG story a couple days ago that during football season, it's one haircut a week.
Man.
So I want to know, are you, because the podcast now is a video form, like we're seeing you, can you expense that? Are you expensing those?
Man, I'm not expensing my barber is a family member though, so that helps. He's a kuya, older kuya. And so the timing of the pod. So we're recording on a Thursday. My last haircut was actually last Friday, and I know we're not in NFL season, but the Orioles, the Giants, this is gonna be on national television. We got Apple TV
It's an Apple
tomorrow,
TV game.
Fox game on Saturday, so I might have to get right before heading to the ballpark tomorrow. But yeah, man, during the fall especially, it's a once a week thing.
Nah, I feel you because right before opening night, it was the same thing. Like I had barely been home for 72 hours. My main barber actually wasn't available, so I had to hit up had to go to the bench real quick. And if you know how it is, it feels weird
Yeah,
doing
it
that, but it
does.
was like I got his stamp of
You feel
approval
tense in the
first.
chair, when you're
Yeah,
not it's their first
yeah.
time.
I got the stamp of approval though. It was the same barbershop though, so it wasn't anything kind of crazy there. There's a lot of places that we can kind of start with this Baltimore Orioles team. They're 6-6. They just swept the Chicago White Sox. They're all obviously into their first season under new manager Craig Alberniz, who used to be a coach with the San Francisco Giants. So 12 games into the season, just generally speaking, what have your thoughts been overall on this Baltimore Orioles team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's such a small sample size, but I think a large part of the fan base. So you just mentioned the sweep of the White Sox. Well, predating that, the 3 games prior to that, they were swept in Pittsburgh. No one really saw that coming, and of note, they never saw Paul Skeens during that series. So I think after that series, the fan base was definitely a little tense, and it's like is this a rewind or just basically the same movie that we saw last year with the Orioles getting off to such a terrible start where they fired their former manager Brandon Hyde in May? It's definitely not that, and there are so many encouraging signs. And I even recently wrote a column earlier in the week of those encouraging signs and why those aren't necessarily you shouldn't have to feel that type of PTSD, but it is natural, just given the success this team had 2 seasons ago, and then for them to miss the dance completely, finishing last place last year. So I think Craig Alberniz, he definitely deserves the a longer leash here, and I think there is pressure though with Mike Elias coming off. Their president of baseball operations coming off last year and just not having an appearance at all in the postseason. But man, a long-winded way to say it's too early, and I think there are encouraging signs. And just to tap into those really quick, the rotation, they're already dealing with injuries. Their opening day starter from last year, Zach Eflin, who opened as their number 5 starter in his one start, Justice, he's already on the shelf for the rest of the year with Tommy John. But they've got depth, and so just at that fact that he was last year's opening day starter, slotted to the 5, that shows you the level of talent that has risen, the ceiling level in that. And then offensively, I mean, obviously they go out and get up Pete Alonso, but man, their leadoff man Taylor Ward, who had led off every single game up until yesterday with Gunnar Henderson leading off, he has definitely been a bright spot. Still getting used to that left field in Camden Yards, and he even had some defensive miscues in Chicago, but. Man, that combination right there. And Pete actually did not have a great series in Chicago, but just given his historic everything that he's accomplished in New York, I think that's gonna soothe itself out soon. But offensively, there are some things to like, but again, some concerning signs here early on.
Yeah, Taylor Ward, I think I was looking at the numbers earlier today, and his WRC plus is like 200 or something like that. He's been off
Hey,
to a great
my
start
my,
this season.
My or one of our beat writers, I was gonna say my fellow beat reporter. I got the columnist title now. One of our beat reporters, Matt Wyrick, he's trying to trademark Taylor Two Bags. I think he's got 9 or 10 doubles
Taylor Two
to
Bags.
start to start the season. Yeah, Taylor Two Bags.
So if you're listening to this and you're trying to use that Taylor Two Bags, hey, you got to make sure you take it up with the Baltimore Sun. You had mentioned Pete Alonso there, and I kind of want to use this as an opportunity to talk about the Orioles offseason as a whole, because I think one of the biggest marks on this Orioles team, and correct me if I'm wrong, but after their great run in 23, they just, didn't really supplement the team. They didn't really go out and spend, and they had one of the more active off seasons by any team this offseason this winter. They obviously go out and get Pete Alonso. They traded for Taylor Ward. I think there was some, I don't want to say confusion necessarily by trading, Grayson Rodriguez, but there was definitely
I was a
some,
fan of the move.
it
I
went,
was definitely a
it
fan.
perked up.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a good, jumping off point. Like, why were you a fan of that move?
Yeah, because I mean, you look at Grayson Rodriguez high upside pitcher, and it's funny that they go in and acquire a Shane Baz, who from the same area in Texas, similar trajectory in terms of where they were as prospects many years ago. But it's all about availability. And if you're not ready to take the mound and, you want to root for Grayson, the person to get right. But, even here early on, as you see him start the season with dead arm and have some issues down there with the Angels, that's just what Orioles fans are used to, where you get the trade-off in a rare player for player acquisition is that you get an offensive piece where last year offense, I mean, the rotation clearly a big issue. The injuries were a huge issue. They had the most players in MLB, tied with the Marlins from a couple seasons ago. But offensively, they just did not have that guy. I mean, Gunnar Henderson, rising superstar, but he was dealing with injuries last year. They did not have a consistent offensive piece. And Taylor Ward coming off a career best season into a walk year, man, that's benefiting both sides. He's looking to get paid, and the Orioles are trying to maximize this 1 year that they get out of him, or over a few years of control of an oft injured pitcher. So, but tying back to their aggressiveness this offseason, certainly this is the highest payroll in Baltimore Orioles history, floating, I believe, in the $165 million range, just short of 170. And man, for there weren't really any splashes at the winter meetings, man. And Pete Alonso definitely was one of the splashes, and kind of set the tone for what this could mean for the Orioles. And again, he's coming off a shaky two series in Pittsburgh and Chicago, but just based on all of the career success that he's had, I think he's going to be okay.
You mentioned Pete Alonso right there. You mentioned, the Orioles kind of need for that quote unquote that guy along with Gunnar Henderson. Obviously, he's gotten off to a shaky start. He obviously has a very long track record of, for lack of a better term, mashing. This is a guy that's a kind of a walking 35, 40 home run guy. Hasn't really shown it yet, but what have you made of his plate appearances so far? Maybe even the conversations that you've had with either him or guys around the team about, maybe his impact as a clubhouse leader with that team.
Yeah, clubhouse leader is a big way to put it, Justice. A, a, a frequent term or a phrase that has been used over the past half decade with this team is a young core. Obviously featuring Adley Rutschman. You talk about all the other pieces that are coming up now. Gunnar Henderson, a big one. Jackson Holliday, Jordan Westberg. The list goes on. But they never really had that established veteran presence. And when they did have those guys, they obviously shipped them all off at last year's trade deadline by the way of Cedric Mullins, Ryan O'Hearn, etc. So that was really a vacant spot that was missing this offseason, and Pete Alonso certainly fills that void. We've seen him do that in a multitude of ways, man. And my first day at spring training, I was down there in Sarasota for a couple of weeks, and my very first game that I was covering, it was a exhibition against the Netherlands, a very news-filled day. That was Jurickson Profar was slotted to hit leadoff,
Welcome to spring training.
yeah. So he was slotted to hit leadoff, and I literally see team officials like pull him off to the side, and 5 minutes later we get the pass and tweet. So very weird day. And then anyways, they've got their ace going, Trevor Rogers. He was their opening day starter. He's looked great to start the season, just continuing his dominance from last year. Anyway, so Trevor Rogers, he's struggling to get through the first inning. And we're like probably halfway through the order, and Pete Alonso actually calls his own mound visit, and he and Trevor's like, "What's going on?" He was kind of confused at first, and that just showed like the dynamic presence and voice that Pete Alonso is. And I think there's this wide belief that Pete Alonso is just kind of like a funny, goofy guy, and he certainly has that personality about him. But I mean, that kind of proved it right there to me that they're in this meaningless exhibition game. Stats from this thing do not count at all, and he's just trying to make sure that they end up, or I'm sorry, that they clean up all of their mistakes. And you talk about his plate appearance and his at bats. I think they've been quality PAs to start the season, and the exit velocity is certainly there. I mean, like in the Chicago series, he had, man, a handful of lineouts with 105, 110 exit velos. So I think it just comes to hitting them where he ain't, which he's proven to do time and time again.
You had mentioned Adley Rutschman there very briefly, and a lot of people have been circling this as a very big year for him, especially when you consider the incorporation of Samuel Basallo as well. How is that dynamic kind of function? Because it's obviously two catchers there, and they have a lot of faith in Basal. Am I pronouncing that right? I just want to make
Basayo, Sammy
Basayo.
Basayo.
It's the
Yeah.
double L's. It's the double L's. But how has that dynamic worked out with Rutschman and Basayo? Because they're obviously catchers. You obviously want to get both bats in the lineup. But when it comes to those up the middle positions, they're a little more at a premium than maybe. It's not like they could just stick him in first base because Pete Alonso's at first base. So how's that dynamic function, and how do you maybe foresee that dynamic evolving over the course of this season?
Yeah, I think Adley Rutschman's return to form has actually been one of the most encouraging storylines of this early season, man. He you know, uh, injuries and just struggles defensively, struggles at the plate. Last year, we've really seen a return to 2024, 2023 Adley Rutschman when he was at the top of his game and on that trajectory as one of the top uh, catching prospects in this game. And then now you've got a young buck in Sammy Basayo, freshly 21 years old, coming off a contract extension this past summer. And Adley's definitely going to be their everyday catcher. We've seen a rotation where Sammy will get the last day of the series, and you mentioned that DH spot. That's also a frequent place where Sammy has been placed. And they're not. I know Pete Alonso's the everyday first baseman. He's got the track record of never missing a game over the past 2 years. But we've already seen him take a couple days off in place of Ryan Mountcastle, and we've actually seen Sammy Basayo there as well at first base. So I think, especially with Adley returning to form, they don't want to mess up the vibe or what he's got going on now, because he definitely looks like the Adley Rutschman of old, not the Adley Rutschman last year who went through so many struggles.
Basayo is obviously part of that young core. Another member of this young core is Jackson Holiday. We're not going to see him over the course of this series. Just what's the latest on Jackson Holiday? What's he dealing with? And, where does he kind of fit into this team going forward?
Yeah, sad stuff for Jackson Holiday, man. A broken hamate bone in his right hand, suffered right before the start of spring training when he just got down there early, eager to work. And that's such an injury. I mean, it's a common injury. We saw a handful of players, star players, go through that this off season or going into spring.
It was like
And
three guys in like the same day.
it was, yeah. But just getting back to Jackson Holiday, a sad situation. Actually, the opener against the Giants Friday, April 10, I believe, is his bobblehead night, and it's
Oh man,
not just his bobblehead; it's a dual bobblehead with him and his dog Coconut. So he's gonna be in
missing that.
yeah, he's gonna be missing that. I'm sure they saved a bunch for him, and they got a ship to his house, fresh for him and Coconut, man. But man, just you bring up Jackson, another rising piece, still very young, and I think still has a long way to go defensively. One of the biggest observations that I had in spring training is the dedication and amount of time that Miguel Cairo, their infield coach, served as the interim manager for the Nats last season. Man, every single day, him and Jackson Holiday, and at first I thought Miguel Cairo was just tough to please, but he was just so meticulous with Jackson's uh, body movements, making sure that his lower body is in sync with basically no wasted movements. I mean, you see these drills up close, but the way that he was hammering it with Jackson, not satisfied. I think that's defensively. Jackson Holiday still has a long way to go, and hopefully, that broken hamate injury is a tough one to navigate in terms of like getting your power back. Um, so, hoping for a speedy recovery, but even, just a couple days ago, he realizes he's not 100% yet. So it sounds like he's still got a little bit of ways to go.
Josh, the last question that I want to throw your way, and you can interpret this question any way you like. Who is the player this season? It can be in the majors, it can be in the minors. Who is the player you're most curious about? Like when you kind of like project like which way is this gonna go? Do they make a leap? Do they add something? Like you can interpret that however you like. Who is the player in the Baltimore Orioles system, major league level, minor league level, that you're most curious about?
Oh man, I'm gonna give you two. One
Please
is
do.
actually, yeah, one's related to Jackson Holiday. It was someone who, so the Orioles, they have Jackson Holiday and Jordan Westburg shelved. That's half of their starting infield, or projected starting infield. And Mike Elias claims to have acquired this player before those injuries happened, but Blaze Alexander, man, he has been a great fit for him. So I guess I'm curious on how long he can continue this trend of being a do-it-all player. He plays basically every single position except catcher. I mean, he's been slotted all over in outfield, manning those infield spots that where they need help now filling those voids. And most importantly, he's like a natural everyday shortstop, so that defense comes across, at various spots. But he's also been coming through for them in the 9 spot. I mean, he's one of their best, hottest hitters right now. So how long can he sustain that? And can he hit enough to that when the point when Jordan Westburg and Jackson Holliday are back with the big league club? Is he going to be able to maintain a position? Because I mean, he doesn't really have a position because he's just he's a utility guy who's hitting. So I'm curious how long that can sustain. And he's such a great personality too for the clubhouse, and one that needed it. A lot of bland, just straight, like the not giving you much. Blaze is a great personality in the clubhouse, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. Being in clubhouses. Blaze Alexander, how long can he sustain his trend now? Man, and the other one would probably be the prospect who was most heralded with alongside Samuel Basayo, and that is outfielder Dylan Beavers. We saw his impact. He was one of those late call-ups last season, made his debut. Um, Big pop guy, and especially a plate discipline guy, man. I mean, I'm forgetting the numbers, but he had dozens, at least 2 dozen walks last year in like less than a month of time. And man, I think he just got his first walk. It took certainly a long amount of time. So it was like, where, is it just a matter of MLB pitchers figuring this guy out? Because I do think he is one of the most patient approaches at the plate alongside with Taylor Ward. So I'm just curious on his trajectory as one of their top prospects alongside Sammy Basayo, Dylan Beavers. This Orioles team, they got a handful of funky names, man. You got a Blaze Alexander, you've got a Gunner, you've got a Cowser. We go with a Beavers. They're all over the place, man.
I was just about to say, so you're trying to trademark the Taylor two bags. I think you might have a little difficulty trademarking just Blaze. I think that might be a little hard. I think that might be a little hard. And
Yeah,
we got
man.
the Jay-Z tour coming back up too. So maybe, I don't know, go to New York, see if you can see if you can convince him, bust it out.
Right now, no, yeah, I'm just Blaze. That'd be a great one, and they're actually his acquired from the Diamondbacks for pitching prospect Cage Stroud. So the Diamondbacks are actually coming to town right after the Giants. So he'll see his former mates right after the
Ooh,
Giants series.
we got a revenge game. I love nothing more than a little revenge game. Josh, this was a lot of fun. I'm hoping we can do this sometime down the road. Josh, where can we find your work?
Man, you can follow me at JCT Sports on all platforms. We've got a podcast going on, trying to keep up with you at Early Birds Podcast, and obviously everything across the Baltimore Sun. I've got a very quick, spontaneous question, Justice. How many? What is the strikeout high for the Giants this season?
Ooh, like single game,
In a single game, yeah.
like team wide. I think they've hit 13 at least. I don't know if that's the highest. I know they've had at least one game with like 13. Why do you ask?
Okay. So, we talked about Taylor Ward, Pete Alonso, Gunnar Henderson, and man,
Or
the
are you talking
Orioles.
about pitchers or hitters?
No, I'm talking about hitters. How often had I mean a single game high for San Francisco hitters?
Yeah, I think it's like it's if it's not 13, it's in that vicinity.
Okay, so again, the Orioles have had some games where they've burst out and they need way more of those. Man, they've had 3 games of 13 strikeouts, 14 strikeouts, and a 16 strikeout performance
Oh,
in the
jeez.
game two of the season. So hopefully the swing and miss is out of the way, and yeah, we'll see what comes out. A lot of familiarity with Craig Albertaz, Donnie Ecker there in San Francisco. So a revenge game for them as well.
Revenge game potentially on deck for Craig Alvarez. And I will say, I think the Giants collectively rank about 20th in strikeout rate so far. So I think if the Giants pitchers are able to stack up, 13, 14, 15 strikeouts against the Orioles, that might be that might not be the best sign for the Orioles going forward. But Kuya, Josh, this was a lot of fun. Looking forward to doing this again, and thank you for coming on.
Adding Justice, always a pleasure, man.
It's time for another edition of MLB Corner, and I'm joined once again by longtime Pittsburgh Pirates supporter Alex Stumpf. Alex, what's happening, man?
Hey, doing well. Got through the intro finally.
Took me only three times, man. I got it's right here. I got for those of you that are on video, I got the Bucky's mug full of coffee. I just needed a little more than I thought I needed, but it's an off day for the Giants. It's an off day for the Pirates. It's an off day for a lot of teams around Major League Baseball. So as I try to get my bearings together, I'll shoot it over to you first. Off day in the middle of a season or just off day at any point? How you spending it?
I am sleeping in. I am going to the movies at some point, maybe hang out with some friends, have a nice dinner, live life, I guess, is going to be the answer to this question. All those things that you try to do, except at least on the social part, it's like, hey, let's go out on a Monday night, everyone. That's sometimes a harder sell.
Yeah, this is a good chance to peel back the curtain because our schedules are so weird. Like it's a Thursday and I mean, Thursdays are kind of becoming the new Friday for some people, but it's like a Monday, like the Giants' next off day is Monday. I don't know about the Pirates, but it's like, hey, who wants to go out on a Monday? Everyone's like, no, I got work tomorrow. I got 9 to 5. I don't know.
Yeah, it's sports journalist schedule does not necessarily go with, usually the friend group's social
Nah,
schedule. We never have Friday nights off.
we
Never.
don't. We barely have weekends off.
Yeah.
Anyway, you mentioned the idea of living life, and I think that's an appropriate transition to someone who's living a little bit of life, and that's of course Connor Griffin of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I promise the listeners, I promise you all, this is not the Pittsburgh Pirate Corner. This is the MLB Corner. We are here to talk about the happenings around Major League Baseball as a whole. But Alex, as you know, the Pirates have kind of just been the story of Major League Baseball. Not necessarily for a little bit for the play on the field, but this is obviously a 9 year, $140 million extension for someone that's not even 20 years old. You were obviously there, so I'm gonna let you take the reins. And the question I'll start you off with first is just what was the vibe in the building like? What was the general atmosphere? And you think Bob Nutting was kind of feeling himself a little bit? Had the button down, a little extra button down there for Bob.
Yeah, right before he sat down at the podium, he took off his glasses, put them in his pocket, and delivered it. Like, oh, he is feeling himself a little bit here right now.
Little
But
heat
no,
check.
it was a good vibe in the clubhouse in general. Like, this is hardly a surprise. Like, this was something that had been negotiated, all throughout spring training. The negotiations finished whenever he came up back up to the majors. So, like, it was expected, but to see it come to fruition, I think is a bigger thing because you covered this team in 22, 23, and you saw like the boost that, the clubhouse had whenever like Brian Hayes got his extension and whenever Brian Reynolds got his extension and just kind of being like, okay, they're trying to put a line in the sand here. I think Connor Griffin was kind of, look, we really think we're going to compete for most of this 9 year window, and that's why we are signing him long term. We think that this is going to be a different era of the Pirates, and he's going to be the face of it. So yeah, it is something that I think the organization is justifiably excited about right now.
I think I want to kind of contrast the vibe now on April 9th, 2026 versus April 9th, 2020. Hell, May 2025, June 2025, because it felt like all I was seeing last year, and we've talked about this a lot off camera, is just kind of the ire we had with, Skeens is what in his third year, and in his second year, it's like, when is he going to get traded? When are the Yankees going to try to acquire him? And I'm not saying that the entirety of the direction of the Pittsburgh Pirates is going to get turned around just by this extension because Connor Griffin still has to be the player they wanted to be. But can we get a little bit of a vibe check in Pittsburgh? Because it seems like the vibes are at the highest they've been since uh, maybe 2016. Is that accurate?
Vibes were pretty good in April of 2023. The
That was a
vibes
great
were
month.
Yeah, the vibes are pretty good in 2018 after they acquired Chris Archer. Now, granted, they went south immediately downhill, but I mean, I'm just talking about small pockets of time right here. And like, I get this is a small pocket of time right now, too, but it has the potential to be, years. That's why the Pirates signed him to a 9 year contract. So, yeah, I mean, vibes are higher. This is a team that has an expectation to compete. And not only are they coming out of the gate pretty good right now, they're 7-5. That's definitely a playoff pace. It's also they have the best starting pitcher in the National League. They have the number one prospect, not only in the system. He is up in the majors. He is trying to contribute right now, and he is locked up for years to come. Uh, some of the free agents or acquisitions this offseason, like Ryan O'Hearn and Brandon Lau, are really fitting into the clubhouse, are adding that voice that they need. This is a far from perfect, complete team, but it is definitely infinitely higher vibes than what we saw last year, where last year kind of, whenever they let go of Shelton in May, there was kind of that feeling of like, do they have to blow this whole thing up? Where right now it's like, no, this is why they didn't blow it up, why they mostly stayed the course. They did trade off some people at the trade deadline. They did have to do more than I think they might have expected. But yeah, it was vibes are better right now than they have been in the past.
Yeah, you mentioned April 2023. I think they started like what, 20-9. That was one of the
Yeah.
craziest like singular months of baseball that, that I've ever covered. And it happened after the O'Neal injury too, which is kind of crazy. The one thing that I do want to mention is that, this is obviously a teenager getting upwards of $140 million. It's the largest contract that the Pirates have ever offered in franchise history. And I think it would be a fair question if, or for people on the outside to say, like, hey, this is a guy who hasn't done anything in the majors. Like, how are the veterans in this locker room going to feel? And kind of based off some of the reading that I was doing yesterday and even seeing the quote by Skeens, it kind of seemed like it was kind of the opposite, if anything, that, there was a general vibe of just overall joy, happiness that was kind of exuded by all of the guys in that clubhouse.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things that impressed people on the Pirate side is whenever this started to get closer and closer and closer, Connor brought up, how do you think the room is going to react
Mm.
whenever I sign this contract? Because he's not dumb. He recognizes that he has all this immense talent, that he is worth a contract like this. He also is just selling potential right now. He has barely any major league experience at the time. And that could be a tough sell for someone who has been in the league for years, who has grinded, who has put themselves in a position and be like, man, the kid is going to make more money than I ever will see, on his first contract like that. He had the wherewithal to make sure, like, hey, is this going to be an issue if I sign this? And the reason why, like, it's not an issue is he is all in on the club. It is, he wants to be a good teammate. He wants to be part of a winner. So it's those type of things that, yeah, it's not just like, oh, here's the most talented player in the room and we are going to reward him before he does anything. It's like, okay, here's the most talented player probably in the room, position player wise, and he is happy to be here and he wants to be with you. He wants you, to be his brother. So like that, I think goes a long way here.
So I want to pin a bow on this conversation because, again, we talked about Skeens a lot in the last episode. And when I was thinking about it this morning, I went super macroscopic with it because we obviously talked in the last episode about a lot of the talent that this team has. You obviously have Skeens, Bubba Chandler in rotation. Mitch Keller is a really much an anchor of this rotation. We talked about kind of the upside of O'Neal Cruz. And the macroscopic question that I wanted to pose to you, Alex, is, again, I want to take the conversation we had last year about kind of the vibes of this team and contrast it with now. If Connor Griffin is good, like if he meets expectation, if he is the all-star superstar that this team thinks he's going to be, and the same kind of development happens with some of the younger guys on this team, if Bubba Chandler becomes a stalwart of this rotation as well, if Braxton Ashcraft and there's another name I'm forgetting. Who was just list off some stars. I'm forgetting some
Jared
stars.
Jones and
Jared Jones.
yeah,
There was
Carmen Majinski and Antoine Kelly and Wilbert O'Tell, and like there are a lot
yeah.
of good
So,
young pitchers
yeah.
here.
So there's a lot of good young pitchers. So if those guys pan out and this team is good, the question, it might be too early to answer this, but I just kind of want your gut reaction because I want to be able to come back to this conversation later, maybe years down the line. Do the Pirates, having already spent this 9-figure contract on Connor Griffin, do they almost triple that and say, hey, Paul Skeens, we got a winner here? You're
The
shaking
only
your head.
way the only way I see it happening is if the CBA that the two sides eventually come to agreement to down the road so drastically alters the economic landscape of baseball that it becomes viable. Like if the system is anything current to what it is right now,
Yeah,
I just don't see a
not
path for Paul
necessarily
Skeens.
even an extension. Like if it was free agency, like could you see
Oh
that?
no.
If this
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
it's
no.
free agency, it's his free, like he goes into free agency. Skeens has had again. This is like way down the line, but I think again, I mentioned this now in 2026 because I kind of do want to see like what can change in like honestly the next 4 years because that's going to be kind of the looming thing overall. This like if the Pirates are good, does
Mhm.
Skeens like do they cough up the money to make sure that Skeens is something close to a Pirate for life?
I mean, the counter to that is if the Pirates are good, that's going to be because Bubba Chandler hit and Braxton Ashcraft hit and Connor Griffin turned out to be what we thought he was going to be and O'Neal Cruz became what we thought he was going to be and probably some wild cards like a Tamar Johnson ends up being a stud or whoever and like that type of stuff comes together and like at that point I think just the supporting core is going to be so good and cost so much that I, I don't see them being able to spend $40 million for Paul Skeens annually at any point without like a drastic overhaul of the current economic system in baseball. I wouldn't even know what it looks like. That's basically my out of me just saying like no, there's no chance, but like that's kind of how I view it right now.
I'm gonna go back to the old Yogi Berra quote: "Is that predictions are hard, especially about the future." So let's
Yeah.
go. Let's transition from a team where vibes are high to a team where vibes, depending on your perspective, maybe not as high. The general aura of these two teams not as high. I don't want to talk about the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, the California Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim of Orange County. Let's start with the
America's
good part.
team.
You want to elaborate on that? Why you call
They're
them
Amer-
America's team?
they're America's team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with the good. Let's start with the good. And the good is that Joe Adell had one of the most insane defensive, like singular defensive games that I've ever seen in my life. We're gonna pump the brakes here because we got something else we want to talk about. I just want to properly acknowledge this. Joe Adell, what a career arc it's been for him so far. I think, he's coming off of I think a 38 homer season, robs 3 homers in a game. It's not always linear. And I think just to see like Joe Adell kind of struggle for his first couple years with the Angels, I think this is a really cool moment for him. And just, it's hard to say like singular best defensive games of all time, but this has to be like something close to it. There aren't many others that I can think of off the top of my head where a defense impacts a game this much.
I mean, I'm going to pose a question to you here because this is the beautiful thing about the Joe Adell game is last year he was in the bottom percentile in fielding last year. He had negative 12 outs above average.
Not good.
This year, even after robbing 3 home runs, he's at negative 1 outs above average. It is ridiculous. So
Wait,
like
wait, OAA, DRS, which one?
OAA, he's
Oh,
still at negative 1 after robbing 3 home runs. So like
wait,
this
what?
isn't like a Pittsburgh kid, Steelers, like Super Bowl 30 against the Cowboys. They didn't want to throw against Deion Sanders, so they kept throwing against the other corner, Larry Brown, who wasn't very good, but Neil O'Donnell was worse. So Larry Brown caught a couple interceptions and won Super Bowl MVP. And it's like, okay, well, they were targeting the worst corner out of the two, and he just had a big game. There is no scenario like that in baseball, especially defensively. This is just a wild, you know, Angels in the outfield. Is this the biggest fluke game for a player ever? Like the only one I can think of in the last decade or so that's like this is the Scooter Gennett game, where he hit 4 home
What a
runs, and it
pull.
was a guy. And before that, he was just like hitting 15 home runs a year, and then all of a sudden he hit four. Like this is just the most out of nowhere. Where did this historic performance come from game?
I mean, if we want to talk about like biggest fluke games, I mean, it's no Zach Duke outdueling Randy Johnson in a
No,
2002 or whatever it was.
that
But
was
like,
Josh
I mean,
Fogg. That
if
was
we're
Josh Fogg.
going,
I mean, go for it.
no,
I'll let
if
you.
we're going by like fluke,
I've got another name, but I want to see if you get there first.
who threw Philip Humber? Was it him through
Yeah,
the
it's the exact name I was
Yeah,
thinking
like
of. Yeah.
that's like I think like that kind of qualifies. But I think that's like I don't know if that's the same. Is it? I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if we can count it as the same. I know there's like there's like a running joke in like NBA Twitter of like the random 50-point games, like Corey Brewer's 50-point game, like Mo Williams
Mhm.
50-point game. I think Jalen Suggs had one. Like there's that. But there was also like four homer games last year. Wasn't that like I know Gino Suarez hit one. I'm trying to remember who the
Yeah.
other two
But
were.
Suarez had hit 49 homers, had 40 home run seasons before. It's one of those you don't bat an eye. It's I'm looking for the equivalent as me, a very, very casual basketball fan, seeing Bam put up 83, and you're like, where did that come from? Type of thing. That's kind of what I'm equating this Joe Adele defensive
Oh
performance with.
man,
Except Bam would have to be averaging like 8 points a night, for the 83 to really comp here.
biggest fluke game. This can go. I'm trying to think of like just true outlier games. Like I'm stumped right now because I don't know. Like there's probably like a random. I mean, if we're gonna keep bringing up former Pirates, like Michael Perez's three-homer game like comes to mind in 2022, like coming off the heels of Brian Reynolds hitting three homers the day before. Like Brian, like again, it's kind of like Brian Reynolds hitting three homers. Okay, like he was an all-star in 2021, but Michael Perez, which there's like this graphic I think that we were posting in our group chat a couple days ago that was like Michael Perez, Roberto Clemente, I think it was like Latino-born players
It
with
was the
three
only Puerto
homers.
Rican Pirates to hit homer 3 times in a game.
What a
A
graphic that is.
journeyman backup catcher and the greatest player in franchise
What a
history.
see, like it's that. So I don't know. Like maybe you know what? For the next, how about this? For the next MLB corner, we will dive into this.
All right.
We'll dive into this like biggest potential flu games. I think this is going to be like a very fun thing for next week. I think to pull some names, but okay, the Joe Adele game, fantastic. Whoever like the shot, like that shot in the stands where he's like the hurrah,
Amazing. Amazing.
amazing shot. A lot more valor than the Derek Jeter running into the stands.
Mhm.
I don't
Because he actually
despise
had to go into the stands for that one.
I don't despise Derek Jeter as much as you do, but I know that, bringing that up right now made you a very happy man. So that's the good. That's the good from the Angels. I do also want to bring up super briefly Robert Stevenson, going to be out for the season. Very unfortunate with the UCL. I think it's reconstruction. I think that's what they're calling it. Fellow Filipino American, also from the East Bay as well. Um, let's bring up the fight.
Yes.
Let's bring up the fight. I rewatched this fight about 5 times this morning. And every time I watched it, I came away with something new. I love I want to preface this. I don't it's some real like toxic masculinity to like just throw down. I'm never gonna encourage, but it's such a baseball thing, like more than any other sport. Like maybe hockey where they like throw the gloves off. But I feel like baseball like has just the best when it comes time to have fisticuffs. It's the best. So I've watched it. You've watched it. What are your like? Just walk me through your instant thoughts of like watching this whole thing go down because it is. There's a lot to unpack. There's so much to unpack. There's so
Oh,
much to unpack.
there is. I love the inspired choice of keeping the baseball in hand.
That
Like,
was what I was gonna bring up too.
yeah, I mean, I think that's the real takeaway here. That's what makes this fight unique, in my opinion. It's not just, we've seen a bunch of times where baseball players take swings at each other and, nobody knows how to actually fight. But then you like, oh, he's hitting it with a blunt object and maybe like the worst type of blunt object because it's still gonna hurt his fingers along the way. But like I appreciate the mindset of, well, I have it, let's use it. My biggest takeaway was, just watching it and thinking to myself, like, this is a good one. It's been a while since we've had like a genuinely good one. Like, when was the last really good one before this? Down goes Anderson.
I was gonna say, that's got to be like one of the best like calls to a fight as
Yes,
well. Um, I think maybe. I mean, again, my brain it just kind of goes back to the Buccos where Amir Garrett wanted to take on like the entirety of the dugout, but like this
that's a
was
top
like
five all time.
this was a really good. I think there's like subcategories of fights, and this was like a true classic pitcher, hitter. No one else is involved in this. Because the Amir Garrett one, it was him versus the world. The one with I think was it Archer and Derek
It,
Dietrich.
yeah,
Like that was kind of like everyone was involved. This was a true Nolan Ryan, Robin Ventura,
yeah.
pitcher, hitter, no one else involved. And I think there's something, I don't want to say beautiful because, again, I don't want to encourage fighting, but there is something like classically baseball against mano a mano and everyone just sprinting and just trying to break it the hell up. Which, if you want to talk about people breaking it up, Walt Weiss. Do the Steelers need a free safety? Like, what a tackle.
Maybe if he could play quarterback too, that'd be great. Yeah, great tackle on his end. I get what you're saying about, not want to glorify the fights as the baseball. I'm going to wax poetic here about baseball fights here for a second. It's something beautiful. Like hockey is a physical sport, and you can see why, the fights where you get out. Football, physical sport. You can see why there's an occasional fight that breaks out. Baseball, I feel like a good chunk of the fights are due, at least in small part, out of boredom. That there's just, that there's just so much baseball going on, and there's so much time that you're sitting in a dugout, and there's so much time that you're just watching, not actively participating, that whenever it just something primal goes off in your brain, like, I can throw fists. I can like that's a way to pass the time. We can make this more lively. And I don't know. This had the feel of like a good 80s style, we're bored, let's fight type of fight. I remember talking to you about this. It's like, man, what happened on the Braves with these two? Lopez and Soler both on the Braves, and you're like, were they on the Braves together? I don't think they were. And I'm like, okay, then they were both on America's team. And no, they didn't They didn't, share a clubhouse there. So I really don't know what was going on here, or what the previous history was. Like,
yeah, I mean, the previous history is that Jorge Soler has 5 homers and a 2,000 OPS against Reynaldo Lopez. And at some point, and again, to provide a little more context, like he hits the homer in the first at bat, second at bat, Lopez plunks him, and then the third at bat, up and in. And I'm not fluent in Spanish. I speak a little bit, but I was looking at the YouTube comments, and apparently the context of, I can't remember if it was Soler or Lopez. They were like, "What's up?" Like, what's like, and it's kind of fighting words, and then you go from there. So, there's a Mike Krukow phrase, "Ownage is ownage," and I think Lopez just decided this was too much ownage, and I'm going to throw fists. Well, I think it was Soler though that like.
I was going to say, Soler was the one who kind of like, if he was reacted to the pitch and they thought it was personal, that's one thing. But like, Soler instigated the fight, at least in my view.
Yeah. And you want to talk about blunt objects, like obviously what comes to mind is Bryce Harper charging Hunter Strickland. That was another great like 1v1 fight. Also, shameless plug on my end, wrote a story about how Bryce Harper, Tony Vitello, their friendship, how Harper has been kind of a resource to him. Go check that out on Mercury News. I know you're just like, why are you plugging your own stuff on your own podcast? Whatever.
Do it.
But that was an instance where a blunt object could have been used, and it wasn't, thankfully. I think one of the goriest incidents was the Juan Marichal fight in the 60s where he actually had the bat and he used it. Again, not glorifying that at all. I do want to disagree with, the Amir Garrett one being the greatest fight ever. I think my personal favorite, and again, not glorifying fighting, but the Lenny Randle, like back in the 70s, I think. I don't remember who the pitcher was, but he gets thrown behind him. And then so the next pitch, he lays down just the most perfect bunt up the first baseline with the sole intention of leveling the pitcher. And as the pitcher's coming to get the ball, like lowers the shoulder. And my favorite part is he keeps running to first base. He's like, I'm still going to try to beat this out. And then it's just like the fight breaks out from there. And I'm like, oh, like there's like, again, we could talk about that fight in particular, but that's an all-timer right there. And anything else we want to talk about before we pin a bow on this conversation between? I also do want to mention quickly, he homered in his first at bat after appealing the 7-game suspension, which that just adds another layer to this.
Why not? Have fun.
Have fun with it. All right. Let's I want to have a little bit of an interlude before getting to this next subject. Now, Alex, as you can see, I am wearing a hat. And this hat for the visual people, it has a brim. I want to talk about the Dodger with no brim. The Edwin Diaz wearing a Dodger cap with no brim. There's this famous clip. I'm gonna insert it here. It's the whoa Yankee with no brim.
Whoa, Yankee with no brim.
It's just, and then there's like another like Yankee with all brim. I don't care, man. I'm not even trying to be a contrarian. I love it. It's really dumb, but I love it. Any fashion statements that are just all, I love it. You're shaking your head. You don't. Please elaborate.
I feel like I'm real life has become one of those TikToks where it's like, what year were you born? And I say 19. It's like it starts with a 19. That's what Dodger cap with no brim feels like to me. Like we have just lost the plot with fashion. I can't even really get too worked up. I really do feel like I'm just yelling at a cloud, telling kids to get off my lawn. It's just too, it's a baseball cap. It's not a ski cap. It's supposed to block the sun out of your eyes. That's the whole point of it. That's why they invented it back in the 1800s. I don't know. I can't get. I'm not gonna let myself get too worked up over this. It is a ridiculous fashion choice. I pray it doesn't catch on. I cannot deal with this much stupidity.
Tell the newspapers I'm not mad. Tell them
I
I'm
am
not
mad. I am mad. The newspaper can know.
Okay, two like less crazy fashion trends before we get into the final thing here. Hoodie under the jersey. Manny Machado, he had a hoodie under the jersey. Yes or no? It's cold in Pittsburgh.
That's fine. I can dig it.
And then Adolis Garcia was wearing a shiesty during the night game in San Francisco. Are you pro? Well, I will say this. In the Bay Area, it's not cold enough to need a shiesty. You see someone with a shiesty at any point, at any venue, you could probably just walk away. Not probably ideal. Pro shiesty, anti shiesty in a baseball field.
You know what? This is how I'm going to hit you with this. I am pro hoodie under the jersey. That is appealing to my going to high school in the 2000s. You know, I wear short sleeve shirts under long sleeve shirts under short sleeve shirts. It has that vibe. I approve of that fashion choice. Let's bring that back. I disapprove of Yankees with no brim, and I am not going to get worked up over shiesty. So there we go. I ran the gamut of fashion.
We got all three. It's some real. We got the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit.
In my plain blue shirt or hoodie that I bought for Kohl's for $25.
Hey, shout out to this hoodie though. It's a Filipino brand in Chicago. I'll link to it in the description. Last thing I want to hit on is ABS, the automatic ball strike system. Got to see it in spring training. We've now gotten more of a functional use of it, and what I mean by that is like spring training. It's kind of like you don't know how this is actually going to impact winning and losing. I kind of want to stay away from the winning and losing aspect of it. Like, I mean, that's part of it, but just what are your opinions of it about how it's functioned overall? Like seeing it like in a major league stadium, the way that people react to it, the way that you personally just enjoy it so far.
I mean, I am very pro pitch framing for catchers. I think that is a skill. I think that is something that helps young players, young catchers who maybe don't have the bat yet, give them another opportunity to impact the team, impact the game, make a mark on the major leagues. I think the challenge system we have right now is probably the best case scenario for if they were going to use automated in some way that, the framing does still matter. It still matters that the strike zone. We saw in Pittsburgh on the top of the ninth inning against the Orioles again on Saturday. Dennis Santana threw a pitch for strike three. It was challenged. Orioles were challenged. They were wrong. That was their last challenge of the game. And the bottom of the ninth inning, Nick York probably should have been called out on strike three, but it was called a ball. Orioles couldn't challenge. He rips a game-winning double on the very next pitch. So, like, I do like that strategy part of it. I still have a little bit too much purist in me. Like, this is going to be, again, old man yelling at cloud. But if you are a catcher and you set your glove perfectly right outside of the outside corner and the pitcher throws it, he just dots it, gets it right here, you don't move the glove at all, that is a strike. If you go for that exact pitch and he accidentally, he lets it fly and it barely catches the top right, inside corner, and that's a ball, in my opinion. And I don't like that it's, reversed now, that it's more just throw hard and try to get it in the zone rather than hit the glove, master your command.
Yeah, there was an instance in spring training that really comes to mind where Logan Webb was on the mound. Patrick Bailey sets up inside. Logan Webb yanks it outside. And it's one of those classic, like, even if it is a strike, like, you're never going to get that call just because the pitch was so off.
Mhm.
But then Bailey went to the double tap. They went to the challenge and it was a strike. And, by the rules, like, that's exactly what you're supposed to use it for. Like, when you think a pitch is a strike and you have enough conviction, or otherwise you think it's a ball, go to the double tap. I think the one to the purest element, like, I don't like outright hate this. But there's two things that come to mind when you talk about the purist. I thought about this with the pitch clock of, like, remember the Harper go-ahead homer against, I think it was Suarez. When you think of moments like that, I think someone mentioned, like, what if the pitch clock was a thing? Like, and there was like a pitch clock violation, and then, like, that moment never happens. And I do think about that with the ABS. Like, what if it's Game 7 of the World Series? Or I think of, like, 2010 NLCS Game 6, Brian Wilson, strikes out Ryan Howard looking. Ryan Howard could just, tap the helmet, and then, that moment's overturned. So I think about that. Like, there's eventually going to be a point where, like, a great ending is, like, it's going to have ABS. Like, it's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point. The other thing, and I want to throw this over to you. This is kind of the Michael Irvin, we're losing recipes. We're losing opportunities for people to just get blood red mad and argue. Like, there is no Kyle Schwarber throwing his helmet after the Angel Hernandez if the ABS system is a thing. And again, this is, like, all purist in me, like someone that, like, I do love a good baseball argument. And we don't have as many opportunities to argue because you can go to replay, you can now go to the challenge. Like, maybe that's good. Maybe. But, like, would we know Earl Weaver? Well, I mean, we would know him, but, like, when I think of Lou Piniella, I think of him kicking dirt. When I think of Earl Weaver, I think of him getting tossed, Bobby Cox getting tossed. So I don't know. Like, where do you stand on that? Like, is it a good thing that we're losing out on opportunities for people to argue, or is it kind of are we losing recipes, like Michael Irvin said?
I think this goes back to me waxing poetic about the baseball fights, that there's just this underlying small simmer of anger, or or something that could just explode at any given moment in some of the mundanity of this game, and we are losing those opportunities. And I'm going to miss the manager yelling at an umpire, throughout history. I love that in Don Kelly's second game as manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates, he got tossed. They didn't have a bench coach at the time, and we were wondering for, like, a solid inning, like, who is running the ship here? Like, what is going on here? But it was, yeah, it's something that I guess I hadn't fully grasped yet, that we are losing more and more of those avenues. Like, I think we said last time, like, oh yeah, for sure, if any manager was going to be tossed arguing the robo on first, my money was going to be on Derek Shelton. But he can't do that again.
You can't argue the robots.
You can't argue the robots. The robots are technically right, the best type of right. So yeah, I'm gonna miss that.
I don't know about that, because we are, as someone that lives in the Bay Area and has to see the million AI billboards when I drive into the city, I think some of these robots need to be a little wrong. I think we took that. I know you don't know this, but we took down the Coca-Cola billboard in San Francisco. Classic billboard. Really had no function. And now we got the AI. Do you know which billboard I'm talking about? You look like you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, with the bottle?
No, not the Coke bottle at the ballpark. It's
okay.
like this. It's this old billboard. It was like super. I think it lit up. It was super analog. Looked really cool. And now it's all these AI billboards. So yeah, like, we got technology. We're gonna use it. Maybe in the NFL we could use a little more. I don't think we need to keep the chains. I think we can figure that out.
Oh, I love the chains. I miss the chains.
the Jadeveon Clowney moment in college football where like the chains were wrong, instantly makes a game saving tackle. Sometimes I think we do need. This is all I'm gonna say. A human element of the game, I don't dislike. Alex, where can we find your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Alex J. Stumpf. I have a podcast with North Shore 9 called Offbeat, where I take a daily look at the Pirates, and I got a Substack called Book Rule Bucks.
Book rule. It's a ground rule double, Alex. I'm tired
No,
of
it's
this
book rule.
nonsense.
It's in the book.
Nonsense. But anyhow, this was fun again. We will come back next week and we will talk about our favorite MLB fluke games. I'm going to be really excited to figure out what we dig up. But until next time, Alex, appreciate you for coming on. We'll talk later.